welcome. This is Jackie Cambridge. Welcome to one of our Take 5 videos where we're just going to take between no more than 5 to 10 minutes just to give you an overview of one particular aspect of health and safety. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to one of our Take 5 for health and safety. In this Take 5 session, we're going to have a look at a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. I'm sure all of you have done some risk assessment of some description, whether it's on general activities, on manual handling, computers, etc. And all the requirements for risk assessment, it's not just a risk assessment, it's a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. So we're going to look at the criteria for suitable and sufficient relating to the management of health and safety at work regs and our general risk assessment. So we have our Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, long before risk assessment was even invented. Along comes the Management of Health and Safety at Work regs in 1992. We're now on the 1999 version, but they introduced this concept. Every employer must complete suitable and sufficient risk assessments on all their work activities, routine and non-routine. A suitable and sufficient assessment, not just an assessment. So Regulation 3 of the Management Reg says suitable and sufficient. We might have an assessment done. Is it suitable and sufficient? It needs to accurately identify the risks from work, not all the hazards, but the significant risks. So remember, the hazard is the thing with the potential to cause harm. The risk is the likelihood and the severity. It's the outcome. What does the hazard lead to? The detail in your risk assessment has got to be proportionate to the risk. If you're doing it on an office, it doesn't have to have as much detail as if you were doing a chemical installation. We can ignore insignificant routine risks. We need to focus on the significant ones. So the level of risk, the more sophisticated the assessment. So if we were looking at something very technical, like a chemical processing plant, we're not just going to do an ordinary general assessment. We may then even carry out specialist assessments, things like fault tree analysis, event tree analysis, etc. So higher the risks, more sophistication. We must, in a suitable and sufficient assessment, consider the risk to our employees, but also other people. On your site, you might have a range of other people. That could be visitors, contractors, members of the public, a range of different people. So your list might be slightly different. And in some cases, it might be the others that are greater at risk than your employees. We need to make sure that we use approved codes of practice and guidance notes and other information when we're doing our suitable and sufficient assessment to make sure we've covered all of the key issues. We have a duty to ensure that we identify reasonably foreseeable risks. There are sometimes risks out there that we just genuinely couldn't foresee, but what ones are foreseeable? If we've already had some accidents, that means that risk is foreseeable. You do your suitable and sufficient assessment in a way that it's valid for a reasonable period of time. There isn't a deadline. The higher the risk, you might review it in 3 months. Lower the risk, you might review it in a year's time, but do it in a way that it remains valid for a reasonable period of time. You shouldn't be doing one today and then have to redo it next week. That isn't the purpose of it. If you've got health and safety trade union representatives or ROSEs, representative employee safety, we need to involve those people in our risk assessment process. And if you've got 5 or more employees, your assessment and the key significant findings must be recorded. And our suitable and sufficient assessment must be completed by competent people. And even when we talk about a competent person, it could be one person who knows about risk assessment, somebody else who knows about the job. Put those 2 people together and you've got a competent risk assessor. The higher the risk, you might need to refer to other people, more specialist people on different activities such as, explosive atmospheres, etc. But whatever the assessment, even a basic one on an office, it's still got to be completed by a competent person. And suitable and sufficient, you have a legal duty to ensure your assessment is reviewed if there's a significant change or if you have reason to believe that it's no longer valid. So it could be something has changed, it could be the business is taking on a new activity, there's a new machine, you move into a new location, but there is the duty to ensure that it is reviewed. But again, the law doesn't give you a specific deadline. It's up to you to decide what's a realistic deadline for reviewing our assessment. So you might have loads of risk assessments out there, but are they suitable and sufficient? So a general risk assessment, the process you can see here, identify the hazards, who's at risk, look at our existing controls, evaluate the risk, implement our new controls, record the assessment, monitor and review. That's the assessment process. That is not the suitable and sufficient. What we've just looked at is what would make it suitable and sufficient. If you prefer the Health and Safety Executive's 5 steps to risk assessment, there may only be 5 steps, but it's actually exactly the same. They just combine a few of the stages together. So you can see you've got identify the hazards, identify those at risk and how they could be harmed, what existing controls have you got, assess the risk where appropriate, put in your additional controls, record your assessment, 5 or more employees, monitor and review. So take 5 on a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope to see you in one of our next videos. Thanks very much.